FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 25. By Wen Kexing was way more interested in the other man than this currently being hanged ghost, so when the former left, he immediately followed. But his steps halted, as the man who was just standing here a few minutes ago had vanished without a trace. Wen Kexing scanned through the big crowd. Zhou Zishu was like a drop of water in a big ocean. The moment one lost sight of him, his existence would be impossible to be detected. Wen Kexing felt a sense of bewilderment, his eyes narrowed. He scanned the crowd again in concentration, unable to accept defeat, but the other man had really just up and disappeared in front of him like that. In his heart blossomed an unspeakable feeling that was somewhat akin to how people felt when something slipped away from their grasp, and for some unknown reasons mixed with a little anger. Even if Wen Kexing successfully cracked the mystery that was his identity and inner thoughts, that man could just disappear anytime he wanted. He, the one who managed to escape the labyrinth that was Tianquang's, was the most slippery eel one could find on earth. Leaving Wen Kexing behind, Zhou Zishu visited a counting house. In the Dongting area, or perhaps the entirety of Jiangnan, there was a famously modest counting house called the Ping'an House. It was a fairly successful business but never drew too much attention to itself or planned on expanding to other regions. It seemed like the owner had no big ambitions and was contented to operate in this prosperous land. After looking up at the house's signboard, Zhou Zishu went inside. A voice rang out, "Welcome. Do you want to exchange banknotes or?" Zhou Zishu went past the assistant to reach the shopkeeper himself. He spoke softly with a faint smile. "I want to ask Sir Song for a favor, could you contact your supervisor for me?" The shopkeeper startled, lifting his head to examine Zhou Zishu. After a good while, he spoke cautiously. "And you are?" Zhou Zishu lowered his voice even further. "I'm an old acquaintance of your Lord Seventh, last name Zhou." The man's expressions changed immediately upon hearing Lord Seventh from him and became more serious. He took a few steps forward and guided him to sit down himself. He stood beside him and said in a respectful tone while telling the assistant to serve him tea. Of course, I shall contact Sir Song immediately. Although I'm not sure if he is still in Dongting right now. Is it all right for you to wait for a few days?" Zhou Zishu nodded. "No need to hurry, and you should sit down too," he asked the shopkeeper in a very gracious way, but the man kept frantically waving his hands as denial. He asked, "Sir Zhou, about your business with my superior, do you want to speak to him directly or do you want me to do something for you beforehand?" After some thoughts, Zhou Zishu replied, "There's nothing else that I can think of, but have you ever heard about a thing called the lapis armor?" That took the man by surprise. "This? I did know a bit. Are you talking about the lapis armor that is made of the 5 broken pieces of lapis lazuli?" Zhou Zishu nodded. "Yes." The shopkeeper fell into deep thought. After a while, he took out a piece of paper and wrote lapis armor on it. "I'm afraid my knowledge of it will not be sufficient. I hope you don't mind waiting for another few days, as I think I do have some ways to dig up more information." Zhou Zishu examined the man. He looked like he could be anything from 30 to 40, clever face, spoke slowly and carefully with definite consideration in each word, that fox clearly taught his folks well. Once he had no idea how much power and influence his old friend had after he left the capital, but after seeing this, he was certain it would not merely be contained in these simple counting houses. A cup of tea later, he left. Who could have ever thought that the former leader of Tianquang now had to rely on others for intel, or to ask for that person's help just to protect the life of that Zhang Chengling brat? Though, it was also worth noting that Zhou Zishu had no idea why he was helping him when they were just strangers. How did the kid's life concern him anyway? A fool's errand, that was what. But throughout a person's life there was bound to be incidents like this, where you couldn't help but insert yourself in other people's business. Is this ultimately my fate? Zhou Zishu thought. How else could he have come across the kid in this vast land of Jiangnan? He walked leisurely along the main road, sunbathing since there was nothing else for him to do. He only visited a tavern after having feasted his eyes on the scenic view of Dongting with satisfaction, and when the sun was starting to go down. He ordered a pot of wine and some dishes, thinking about how today was really good to him. It was as if he never had such a good day like this in his entire life before. Today he was either miserable himself or spent time planning on how to make others' life miserable. There was a young lady playing a zither nearby. The beauty complemented the music all too well. Everyone cheered for her after the song ended, and Zhou Zishu, enjoying both beauty and song very much, put a silver ingot on the plate. The girl was initially dumbstruck, then she smiled, bowed at him and said her gratitude in a soft voice. That lifted Zhou Zishu's mood incredibly. All of a sudden, there was someone sitting in the seat opposite him. They said matter-of-factly, "I'm here so that you can treat me wine." Zhou Zishu tensed up. His debt collector was finally here. Ye Bai was not at all gracious about this. To him, he was already lowering his standards to stand these vulgar indulgences like food and wine, so it was natural for the other person to greet him with trepidation. Ignoring Zhou Zishu, he began ordering hordes after hordes of food himself, then spoke calmly, "Please have anything you like, don't be reserved." Zhou Zishu gave him an odd look. "How are you seeing any ounce of reservation in me?" He was starting to suspect that this person was here to deliberately trick him. The amount of food he just ordered could very well feed 2 pigs and not 2 humans. Seeing that he wanted to order no more, Ye Bai suddenly realized, "Oh, right, you're injured so you don't have an appetite for all this. But my advice is that you should eat as much as you can, seeing that you don't have much time left." The odd look in Zhou Zishu's eyes intensified. If this man wasn't Monk Gu's disciple, he could have made a great career out of being other people's punching bag. At that moment, another figure walked up to the table ostentatiously and pulled a chair next to them, completely uninvited. He examined Ye Bai without showing any emotions. "Asu, I was just wondering why you disappeared without a goodbye, but it seems like you're occupied with another man." Just like that, Zhou Zishu's good mood caused by the young lady's smile died out. Internally he began to debate whether he should stand up and leave with a "Please help yourself, it's time for me to go." Wen Kexing turned his head, seemingly gritting the words through his teeth. "Who is he?" He was about to say that the man was an acquaintance he met by chance, but mysteriously, words failed him and he felt strange. Unsure why an explanation was necessary, his strange expressions faded. Ye Bai, in contrast, nodded at Wen Kexing's direction as he replied in an easy-going manner. "My name is Ye Bai." Wen Kexing gave him a false smile and turned away, about to say something but was cut off by Ye Bai. "I know you, you were the one who set fire to the Zhang child's room that day," he said without a care. Zhou Zishu's hand with his cup of wine froze in mid-air, and Wen Kexing's smiling expressions vanished. He stared at Ye Bai as if staring at a dead thing, with bone-chilling murderous intent circling around him. Zhou Zishu shivered and furrowed his brows. The waiter who brought them food right at that moment was scared shitless by his vicious aura and almost dropped the plates. In split seconds he saw a blur, and the dishes that he almost dropped were now completely safe in the hands of the gentleman in white. Even Zhou Zishu's vision could not make out his movements clearly. Was Ye Bai really that strong? If he was Monk Gu's disciple, then what would this say about his infamous master? Cold sweat broke out on Zhou Zishu's back as he found out that whatever information Tian Chuang had gathered about the incredibly mysterious Monk Gu might not be correct after all. Wen Kexing's pupils contracted, even though he showed no fear on his face, he also withdrew his bloodlust. He examined the white-clothed young man. This person was only 26? No, it was possible that this youthful skin was only a disguise of his true age. He could be around 30 perhaps? No, doesn't sound plausible, either. He carried on himself the same feeling that his name gave, emptiness. When he sat there unmoved, he looked like a fake human, preventing others from both reading the change in his emotions and using their own sentiments to influence him. He was sitting right next to them, but seemed like he was existing in another world. Yebai paid no mind to how strong of a reaction he had drawn from both of them and buried himself under all the food. With each new plate, Zhou's issue and Wen Kexing's expressions continued to twist. This disciple of Monk Gu had an endless stomach. He stuffed food into his mouth at lightning speed, and even though his movements weren't boorish, the sight could be described as a hurricane just went past the table. He devoured food like he hadn't had anything in his belly for 8 lifetimes, his chopsticks flying around incessantly, leaving nothing for others. Zhou Zishu, who didn't have an appetite in the first place, and Wen Kexing, who didn't even come here for food, were entranced by this enthusiasm and motivated to taste some themselves, to see what kind of delicacy this tavern was serving. Only when there was an awful mess of plates left on the table like the aftermath of a war did Yebai put down his chopsticks and wiped his mouth in satisfaction. His lips curved and there seemed to be a proper smile on his face. He said to Zhou Zishu, "Thank you for treating me." With nothing else to be said, he stood up and left. Zhou Zishu had a sudden thought about how incredible Monk Gu was for being able to raise such an individual. Wen Kexing abruptly spoke up. "What he just said? I didn't want to." He stopped, a little spaced out. He was unsure why he was saying this, and his chest seemed to tighten. After quickly glancing at Zhou Zishu, looking down and smiling in self-mockery, he returned to his usual self. "That's Monk Gu's disciple? I see that he's more like a locust dressed in white." Zhou Zishu lifted his wine pot and poured himself the last drops. He didn't mention the fire. He knew without doubt that if Wen Kexing ever wanted to kill Zhang Chengling, that would be as easy to him as crushing an ant. There was no need to create a whole commotion with the fire and choose the moment one was absent to execute it. It was not a case of malice, but rather a warning. The problem was, how did Yebai know about this? Although, there was a whole other matter he was reminded of. Zhou Zishu searched his chest pocket, expressions changing comically. He looked up. "About this, do you bring enough silver?" Wen Kexing stared back at him. End chapter.
FarAway Wanderers. Volume 2, Once You Stop Singing, I'll Go on Stage. Chapter 26. Lord 7th. The lush green of trees that stayed flourishing year-round, the bright prosperity, the birds that passed by, the ranges of mountains extended up and down uninterrupted, like the curve of a beauty's back. This place was South Xinjiang. Under an old tree that had to be at least 100 years old sat a South Xinjiang boy with perfect posture. He was around 10 and was doing assignments. He might be young, but his determination was bursting, as he had been focused for 2 hours now, looking like nothing could disrupt his work. Next to the table was a deck chair arranged horizontally, and on it was a man resting with his eyes closed. He was dressed in robes like someone from the Central Land, and between his thighs was an old open book. At the man's feet was a small sable. Being ignored by everyone, it chased its own tail in boredom. At that moment, a warrior walked to them, letter in hand. Seeing the sight before him, his steps got quieter and he waited by the side in silence. The man on the deck chair opened his eyes. He looked halfway over 20s, his long narrow eyes superscript 1 carrying a hint of amusement. When he looked around, he was truly an exceptional beauty. The small sable nimbly jumped into his embrace and climbed up his shoulders, its tail stroking his chin. The warrior presented the letter with politeness. "My lord, it is a letter from head butler Song." Lord 7th uttered a word in assent and opened the letter with only mild interest, but halfway through reading, he abruptly sat up, the look in his eyes sobering. "Is it really him?" The small sable, upon seeing the mysterious paper in front of it, reached out its claws, but was held back by its owner by the neck and gently thrown onto the table by which the boy was sitting. Only then did he raise his head. "Who is it, father?" The man didn't answer right away. He stood up and took 2 steps forward, leisurely folding the letter while talking about something completely off topic. "Luta, did you remember what I told you last time about the principle of this world? About how division precedes unity and vice versa, like a circle?" The young man seemed to be used to his father's habit of speaking nonsense before reaching the focal point, so he played along. You say that it is simply like how after sitting for a long time, one has to stand up, and when they can't stand anymore they sit down again. There is no philosophy to it, just that us humans are born to suffer. A satisfied smile appeared on the man's face, and he said to the dazed South Xinjiang warrior, Axinlei, go find your great shaman for me and ask him if he thinks what I said is reasonable. Axinlei's face was of pure confusion. Huh. The man was about to say something when they heard a small laugh and a gentle voice, are you so unoccupied to the point of wanting to stir up troubles? The man who just came in was dressed in black from head to toe, carrying a scepter that was also solid black. Upon seeing him, Axinlei bowed, great shaman. The shaman muttered a word of acknowledgement and gestured at him. Go do your work, Biwen, don't always make fun of good-natured people. The man named Biwen gave him the folded letter while still smiling, guess who has graced our shop with their holy presence. The shaman didn't feel particularly intrigued, but he received it anyway with a grunt, as long as it's not the Emperor of Decheng. Lord Zhou. On the other man's face was a smile that carried no good intentions at all, my little Venom, how about we pay Zhongyuan a visit? Since our old friend has asked for help, isn't it natural that we should put our lives on the line for him if possible? The shaman looked at the other man's mischievous face without saying anything, but internally he knew the other clearly just wanted to watch chaos happen while helping his friend. Zhou Zishu, not knowing he had signed his fate for having such an acquaintance, was currently distressed about a very materialistic matter. Giant's stomach Ye Bai's presence had left him with a money problem. After the short staring contest with Wen Kexing, Zhou Zishu came to a realization, if Wen Kexing was reliable then Sows could climb trees. He must have possessed terrible luck to be running into both a Baijiater and a freeloader, how great. Wen Kexing, seeing that Zhou Zishu's gaze had turned sour, couldn't help but tighten his clothes around him. He said in a small voice, I only sell my entertainment value and not my body, you must not leave me here. Zhou Zishu asked, so what are you going to do now? Wen Kexing said, since you're the one who treated us, you should sell yourself instead. Zhou Zishu gritted out, I'm not a fucking maiden, will you buy me if I do sell myself then? Wen Kexing's eyes immediately brightened, of course, I will buy you even if I have to sell away all of my fortunes. Zhou Zishu lowered his voice, can you sell all of your fortunes to pay for this meal first then? After a stretch of silence, Wen Kexing finally replied, Su, how about we just run? Zhou Zishu turned his face away without a word. He might have done some roguelike activities to earn some cash, but there was still some conscience left in him. Leaving without paying for a meal was very much against his code of conduct, and he looked at Wen Kexing's openly brazen face, and there's this despicable man. The moment his face turned, he saw someone walking in. Zhou Zishu's spirit was revived as he called out, how coincidental, young Miss Gu. The moment Gu Xiang heard it and saw the two of them, her face turned green with fear. She was going to leave immediately, but she was not as fast as Wen Kexing. The man was already standing in front of her and asked serenely, Xiang, why are you running? A pale Gu Xiang managed to reply, Master, I just went the wrong way. Wen Kexing patted her shoulder and tugged her back inside, don't be shy, if you're here then stay. Gu Xiang felt goosebumps breaking out on her skin, feeling like there was no way her master could harbor good intentions. But now that she couldn't escape, she had to stay close to his every step with skittishness, her posture not unlike someone who was going to be executed. Wen Kexing led her to their table and asked, do you have money with you? Immediately Gu Xiang pulled out all she had, from silver crumbles to paper cash and gold ingots. Only now did Wen Kexing nod in contentment and shout with the confidence of a loaded man, show us the bill. Gu Xiang thought, no wonder that fortune teller told me to use my wealth to avoid bad luck, oh merciful Buddha. Now that she had helped them, Wen Kexing was reasonable enough to let her tag along again, no longer chasing her away. Walking ahead of them was Zhou Zishu, who was deliberating something. After a while, he suddenly looked back and asked directly, "Brother Wen, why did you burn the room of the Zhang brat that night?" Gu Xiang was alarmed. "Master, you committed arsonery." Wen Kexing said entirely seriously, "I saw an astronomical phenomenon indicating that the kid would face a great calamity and it needed fire to be quelled, so I did it right away." In the middle of his talk, he saw Zhou Zishu and Gu Xiang's disdainful faces, so he added, "Acts done out of goodwill don't need to be said out loud, don't look at me with such adoration." Gu Xiang said, "Master, can you see my fate in the stars too?" Wen Kexing replied, "There will be a great disaster happening to you if you don't shut up for a day." As expected, Gu Xiang didn't open her mouth again. They returned to the place where the execution happened during the day. Most of the crowd had dispersed and the ghost was nowhere to be found. It was said that his martial arts skills were crippled completely, and a chain was pierced through his shoulder blades to keep him in place. They arrived when Cao Weining, accompanied by Zhang Chenling, was looking for them. "Brother Zhou, young brother Zhang told me that you are his master." He suddenly stopped talking to gape at Gu Xiang, who was standing behind Wen Kexing, his mouth wide open. Gu Xiang blinked a few times for no reasons, while Cao Weining kept staring at her stupidly. Next to him, Zhou Zishu cleared his voice. Cao Weining was pulled out of the daze and blushed deeply, stuttering, "Miss. Apologies, I didn't mean to be rude, really, just." Gu Xiang, unsure about what to make of that, felt like this young man was not quite right in the head. She saw Cao Weining abruptly took a few steps back while speaking with the smallest voice possible. "My last name is Cao, first name Weining, from Tai Tai Hang, belonging to the Wei line of Qingfeng sword sect. My master is Qingfeng's Patriarch Mo Huayang." After judging him once, Gu Xiang asked Wen Kexing, "Master, what's wrong with him?" Shattered on the ground before he could announce his entire family tree were Cao Weining's pure, juvenile feelings that had just blossomed. Zhou Zishu glanced at Zhang Chenling and said after some thoughts, "Over here, brat." Seeing that the elder didn't shun him away anymore, Zhang Chenling was overjoyed and cheerily followed him. Wen Kexing patted Cao Weining's shoulder and went back to his room with Gu Xiang. The moment Gu Xiang walked past him, Cao Weining could sense a waft of fragrance that muddled his brain completely. Only when they were long gone was he snapped out of the trance, and he started whispering in amazement. "Guan Guan," crooned the osprey, "from where amidst the water, the north was famed for having beauty, who with a gentleman would make a fated pair. Superscript 2 How can such a beautiful young maiden exist, how does?" He walked away while still lamenting, again drowned in his infatuation. Gu Xiang whispered to Wen Kexing once they were far away, "Master, old Meng is also here, he wants to tell you about below." Wen Kexing was completely undisturbed. The corner of his lips lifted but there was no hint of a smile in his eyes. He said gently, "Even old Meng wants to tell me what to do." "Yes." Zhou Zishu silently brought Zhang Chenling to his own room. Nodding once, he said, "Sit down, I want to ask you something." Zhang Chenling sat, perfectly well behaved. "What do you want to know, Shifu?" Zhou Zishu mused before asking, "Did the man with the mark of a hand on his face whom you met that day ask you about whether you had come across a man with a finger missing?" Zhang Chenling nodded. Zhou Zishu asked again, "So have you met him?" Zhang Chenling shook his head. "Shifu, who is that man?" Not giving the younger an answer, Zhou Zishu crossed his legs, index finger lightly tapping one of his knees. Xuefang the hanged ghost was rumored to have lost a finger, that was why he knew the man in black who Gu Xiang killed in the abandoned shrine was not him. But what was the intention of the red-clothed delighted morning ghost? After a while, he spoke slowly with unusual seriousness. "Try to remember it more clearly, kiddo. Did you see anything out of the ordinary that night?" By that night, he meant the night the entire Zhang family was murdered. Zhang Qingling's breath quickened, and Zhou Zishu softened his voice even further. Don't rush things, just think it over carefully. I'm afraid that memory might be very important. Zhang Qingling paled. After a good while, he shook his head while replying in a choked voice, Shifu, you ask me whether there was something unusual, but wasn't that entire night an unusual event? Zhou Zishu's brows furrowed and he no longer pushed him further. After a bout of grave silence, he said, I'm going to teach you a mnemonic rhyme, you have to try to comprehend it yourself and utilize it to further your cultivation. You can come to me if there is any confusion. Zhang Qingling was dumbfounded. Zhou Zishu added, you shouldn't leave Sir Zhao's side during the coming days, and must not act on your own or leave the Gao's manor, do you understand? Zhang Qingling's eyes widened. Shifu. Thank you, Shifu. Zhou Zishu awkwardly coughed and scolded him, stop speaking nonsense and remember what I'm going to say, I will not repeat it for a second time. FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 27. Slaughter. He knew he was in a dream, but the sight before him was too real to be so. The northern wind grazed his mask, but he didn't feel the cold. He had been waiting there for so long with utmost calmness, his pulse even slower than usual. The sun was done traversing the sky, and the night was falling. Zhou Zishu watched all of it, detached from everything as a habit. He didn't know how to view himself as a human, someone with emotions, with a sense of right and wrong. It was for his own self-preservation, as long as he acted without thinking, he wouldn't be driven to insanity. He was merely a pair of bloody hands on which the kingdom of Diqing rested. Prosperity was like beautifully decorated sleeves, and his hands were forever hidden inside of them, making it difficult for people to really see him. Until the rotten age of war was over and peace reigned over the people, another chapter in history would begin. Zhou Zishu lowered his head. The face of the person in his dream was hazy, but he thought he could still see the features that belonged to a little girl. She was held in the nanny's arms like an innocent, helpless lamb while her protector never strayed from her task with a desperate expression on her face. The young girl looked up and said in a tiny voice, my father is a good person, my big brother is also a good person, I'm also a good person, we're all good people, you shouldn't kill us. He remembered. During the reign of the late emperor, to deal a killing blow to the second prince, Tian Shuang was ordered to assassinate the entire family of court official Sir Zhang, who was recently fired from his position and was planning to leave the capital. Sir Jiang's daughter Zhang Shui was only 4 years old, an incredibly smart girl. How would she have turned out to be if she ever got a chance to grow up? Zhou Zishu felt his hands raised, then a shrill feminine scream pierced the night sky. The sword went through her chest, then through the little girl's body. There was no disgust or grief, for he had been used to it ever since he came into his position. Did it matter whether people were kind-hearted or loyal? There was never a law that forbade good people to have their lives taken away. But he heard a drawn-out sigh in the air, someone was saying, an eye for an eye. Sharp pain spiked in his chest as he startled awake and sat up. With excruciating motions, he bent forward and clutched at his chest, teeth gritted to rein in the pained noises. His fingers gripped a corner of the blanket tightly, knuckles white, his hair wild, entire appearance miserable. Amidst the organ-crushing agony, he dazedly thought, look, Zhou Zishu, you damning bastard, you're going to die as well. Tonight, sleep denied Zhou Zishu, Wen Kexing, and Ye Bai. Wen Kexing, instead of going outside, sat facing the window in silence. Gu Xiang stood beside him, solemnity graced her usually ingenuous countenance. She looked out to see a gloomy night sky that had never been any different from the past, the stillness making her look like an obscure lantern. The open window let the chilly wind in, and Gu Xiang's clothes and hair fluttered. The erotic book on the table was also turned a few pages under the wind, creating rustling sounds. Wen Kexing allowed a slow smile to spread over his face and spoke softly, I have waited for this for 20 years. Gu Xiang only looked at him in silence. The smile on his face showed inconceivable relief that bordered on maniacal glee. With no source of light around, he almost didn't look human, prompting reverence in her. When Kexing's hand reached out and made a grabbing motion, seemingly wanting to catch the wind. My wish is that there won't be any forces standing in my way, whether they are humans or ghosts, or immortals, or demons. I want the world to be rid of them and they will be thrown back to hell where they belong. In his other hand was a piece of paper. Gu Xiang's gaze stopped at that yellowed slip, on which a face of a ghost was scrawled messily. It looked like the work of a child. When Kexing stood up and lit a candle, hovering the paper above it until it was burned into ashes. His expression was of pure worship. Ye Bai slept until he was jerked out of his dream for an unknown reason. There was a distinct lack of disorientation in his eyes that should be typical of someone who had just woken up. He remained in bed facing up, hands slowly lifting the strange pendant on his neck to view it. Taking a closer look, one could see that the jewelry was expertly crafted, and was an exact miniature of the realm's command. Ye Bai closed his eyes, muttering, "Chang Qing, I always have a bad feeling about this, why aren't you here anymore? Would the world be so much more peaceful if the command, the Ghost Valley, the Lapis Armor and Tianchuang ceased to exist?" The next morning, beside the sunlight, everyone was greeted with dead bodies. There were 9 in total, arranged in a circle in a location not far away from the Gao's manor. In the middle there was the word ghost written in blood. The whole scene spread nearly 10 meters wide, blocking an entire street and seemed to be right at the place a ghost was executed just yesterday's morning. When Zhou Zishu got there, most corpses had been identified. The ghosts were fair enough to make sure every sect received equal blessing. There was 1 body for each of the 8 sects plus the Gao family, ranging in different gender, age, and status. One of them was Gao Chang's disciple. Zhou Zishu didn't have a distinct impression of this person beside that he was not as outstanding as Deng Quan and of the silent type. He helped out the guests occasionally and didn't say much. Gao Xiaolian cried to the point of almost passing out, but in favor of inspecting the bodies with Abbot Ci Mu, Gao Chang ignored his treasured daughter and left Deng Quan with her. One had a silk thread across their neck, one was struck by the bloody palms, one was drained of blood, one was cut up into parts. Each death seemed to have a different cause. Zhou Zishu heard someone sighing next to him. The ghosts of King Zurich are all crawling out of the nest. His head turned and he saw Ye Bai. Zhou Zishu was surprised to see a faint layer of sorrow on his face, making him look like a porcelain Guanyin statue. Note: in Chinese mythology, Guanyin was adopted from Buddhism, originally a bodhisattva known as Avalokitesvara, and is generally regarded as a figure of compassion. On instinct, Zhou Zishu asked, "What?" Ye Bai cast him a glance, his face expressionless still. "Are you deaf?" Immediately, Zhou Zishu turned away before he could embarrass himself further. Ye Bai's hand landed on his shoulder, and he spoke like how one would speak to a close acquaintance. "Come outside tonight, I want to show you this place." The tone of his voice was not unlike that of Zhou Zishu when he talked to Zhang Chenling last night. Zhou Zishu decided that he would ignore this man until he learned how to speak like a normal human again, but unbridledly, he nodded. He immediately regretted it afterwards and wished he could remove his annoying head from his body. He started to evaluate whether it was worth appeasing his soul to kill a disciple of Monk Gu right now to cover his tracks. Suddenly, there was a voice from the crowd. "Why are these individuals murdered? Every one of us publicly condemned the Ghost Valley, and the ghosts had blended in with us without anyone knowing, so why did they target those 9 only? Are they really that stupid to wage war against the entire pugilist scene? Or are some of you hiding something from us?" Gao Chang stood up upon hearing that, wan and haggard at first glance. He seemed to stumble a little, but as Deng Quan rushed to his side, he pushed away the assistants. His eyes scanned the currently enraged sects, then darted to those who were whispering with doubts. His gaze seemed to carry a weight and cause everyone to quiet down completely. Then they saw him, a legend among martial artists for over 25 years now, with his graying hair and solemn face, murmuring slowly, "This is a debt of blood." Gao Chong lowered his head to stare at the 9 corpses. He raised his voice. "This is a debt of blood. A debt that they owe the Gao family, a debt that they owe all the sects, the world. A bloody debt that they owe anyone with conscience." He seemed to have trouble breathing for a second. Abbot Simu turned the prayer beads in his hands and said Amit Ba Buddha before closing his eyes and muttering prayers for the dead. Deng Quan looked at his old master with worry. He still wanted to help him but repressed the urge as he considered the act to be disrespectful. When Gao Chong looked up, tears welled in his eyes. He pointed to the dead body who belonged to his family. "This disciple of mine was orphaned when he was little, and when they joined the family he took my last name. He was called Gao Hui. He didn't talk much and was teased by other kids. They called him Old Shut-In. He looked like he wanted to laugh but couldn't." The female disciples of the Gao's manor were already bawling their eyes out. After pausing for a bit, he continued, "This little shut-in was a good kid. You must have seen him in the past few days. He was so innocent and honest, but a good kid nonetheless, always worked hard, never threw a fit. He had a grandmother who adopted him from the streets. She's over 80 now. She is blind and hard of hearing, can't really recognize anyone but her grandson, and that is only sometimes. You see, how am I gonna tell her the news? Everyone, you're all chivalrous heroes, please have mercy on me and tell me how I can tell her about this." The autumn wind in Dongting rustled loudly, and dead silence spread over the scene. Gao Chong, an old and respected figure, was bowing to them with his hands in front, pleading with them, "How can I tell her about this?" Even a rude mouth like Feng Xiaofeng clammed up. At this point, if anyone dared utter an unnecessary syllable, they should be considered to be below an animal. Hua Qing-song, the newly appointed patriarch of Taishan sect, was the first to speak up. "Until the ghosts are exterminated, this world will not know peace. From now on, our Taishan sect is under Sir Gao's command. This is our promise. We will lay our lives on the line to avenge our former patriarch, to avenge the deaths of our innocent fellow disciples." After the patriarch of Taishan's sudden death, the sect was left without a leader, and Hua Qing-song was only an overeager man in his 20s. He had no idea that once he had spoken, other big sects had no choice but to follow suit and show their stance. In the afternoon of the same day, under Gao Chong's direction, a grand funeral was held for the dead. The sky of Dongting was permeated with sobriety like there was a plague happening. All activities in town were slowed down. Gao Chong was a capable man, who had united everyone who was previously only acting on their own impulses. At night, after Zhou Zishu had sent Zhang Chengling off, the boy snuck out again to see him. He was greeted with an uninvited guest that was Ye Bai. The man was so indifferent that he didn't bother to wear clothes that would help him blend in the night. He shamelessly knocked on the window and called, "You, follow me." It was too late to execute his murder plan, so Zhou Zishu followed him outside. In the room next to his, Wen Kexing already heard everything happening. His arms crossed and he frowned, face sour. Goose Yang, who was closing her eyes and hanging upside down from a beam on the roof, was woken by him. She yawned and asked, "Master, you said from the beginning that this Josu had a mysterious background and was more than he seemed, and you were worried that he would ruin your plan. It's only been a few days since you started following him. How are you already changing to keeping tabs on him all the time?"